All right, well, we're here with Jeanette Duncan, who's the Executive Director of People's Self-Help Housing. Jeanette, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having
Yeah.
me.
And Jeanette, for folks out there who are not familiar with the mission of People's Self-Help Housing, could you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Well, our mission is to provide affordable housing and other programs that will help families, seniors, farm workers, special needs grow and become more self-sufficient. And we do that by providing affordable housing that we develop, both home ownership and rental housing.
Wow.
And then we offer after-school programs for children who need to have their test scores improved. And we offer that not just to our residents and our rental units, but also to schools in the community that have children that are falling behind.
Wow, and that's really interesting because I would imagine from your name, obviously, main focus of your services are on the topic of housing, but education and housing are actually not are actually pretty related themes. Isn't that correct?
Right, and we found out that just providing housing for someone doesn't mean that they're going to have more income over time or that their children are going to do well in school. If we have families that Spanish is their primary language at home, often the children have difficulty with homework and fall behind. Or maybe the families haven't completed high school, so we collaborate with community colleges and offer GED classes. And we encourage self-sufficiency through that, as well as when people build their first home through our program, that's their very first asset.
Yeah.
That's the first asset they're going to have, and it gives them some equity and also, their solid footing for their family.
Definitely, definitely. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I've heard this term bandied about housing first, the housing first model. And I think, from what I understand, the take on that is that it's, by having housing, folks can sort of regain a foothold and be self-sufficient and do all of those other self-sufficiency things they may need to do in terms of employment, schooling, things like that, medical treatment in the event of, in the case of folks maybe dealing with mental illness and stuff like that. Does people subscribe to that approach? And if not, could you tell us a little bit about your take on the housing first model?
Well, we do practice housing first. Primarily, we have housing that is smaller in size than most. It's not a large three-bedroom house. We own some hotels, downtown hotels, in both Santa Barbara and in Ventura. And then we have very small studio type apartments. And we work with shelter providers or with the mental health department. And we take people who've had a history of homelessness or maybe some substance abuse in the background or dual diagnosed. And then we have social workers on staff that interview them and work with the other providers to make sure that once they get in housing, they're going to be successful. And often we find that when people have been homeless for a very long time, transitioning into housing is a big step. So we want them to be successful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And as you mentioned, I mean, you guys are actually in many counties, going down to Ventura all the way up here, correct?
Yes. Yes, we cover the Tri-County area, and we've built now over 1,300 affordable rentals that we own and manage, and some of those are for special needs, some are for seniors. We also have some housing for developmentally disabled. And our social workers work with all those residents. If a family loses a job or maybe they need medical help and they don't have insurance, then we do have a regular supportive housing staff that goes see them, interview them, and help them with all the paperwork or maybe help them fill out job applications.
Wow, okay, interesting. Wonderful. Yeah, that's an amazing, just the Tri-County region, that's an amazing range, of geographical space that you assist folks with. I wanted to ask a little bit about, we hear so much in the media about the economy, the ways in which the economy has affected folks, all of us really. But I'd imagine for a lot of the low-income types of clients that you guys assist, economic pressures are even more significant during these tough times.
Well, I would say that since since 2008, I was going to say the last part of the 1900s it sort of started. And then in early 2000, things were starting to decline a little bit, but by the time the big recession hit in 2008, we saw families having primarily their hours cut. That was the first thing we saw, a reduction in hours. Later, we began to see actual layoffs. But of all the residents that live in our housing now, I would say the biggest challenge are reduction in hours. We have had some actually be laid off, and we try right away to help them fill out unemployment forms. And so it's important for us to know that the residents, when they're in stress, can go to our on-site staff and tell them when they need help, and then we work on that. But we're hoping that the economy is going to improve. In the ag field, and our farm workers, we actually saw a cut back in their hours, because when the recession hits people, they just don't buy as much food.
Well, and especially up here in the Paso Robles area, wine country, you know, for migrant folks that might be working in the wine industry, I think that the economy has also hit the wineries pretty hard as well, because it's considered more of a luxury item.
Right, and also I think that the wineries and other people working in ag are just working lean and mean. And my impression is that they're trying to cut where they can. So the families get the brunt of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, wonderful.
I heard something recently. I took a family to Washington, D.C. that about 2 weeks ago that built a self-help home. And both the parents work in strawberries. And they indicated that in 1988, they got 25 cents per little strawberry basket to pick. Today they get 26 cents. So as you can see in the ag world, they haven't had much in the way of wage increases. So now if we get wage cuts, it's going to be a double whammy.
Yeah, certainly what you just referenced certainly wouldn't keep up with inflation. So it's probably lower than it would normally be, plus the cuts that you mentioned. Wow.
Right, yeah, our ag workers, and then low wage people working in the tourist industry, they're the ones that have really suffered, or restaurants, they've had their hours cut.
Yeah, and the service industry, you know, that UCSB economic forecast and all of these other studies, Chamber of Commerce's analysis about the local economy, we have a significant service industry in San Luis Obispo, and as one would imagine, tourism and things like that probably aren't as viable or vibrant during tough economic times.
No, we see high vacancies in hotels. Even the golf courses are complaining that people aren't playing as much golf. So it's a ripple effect all through the economy.
Yeah, wow. Well, Jeanette, you mentioned just the amazing large number of units that you guys are responsible for overseeing. And I wanted to ask you more about your organization in the sense of how many staff do you employ? And you mentioned a little bit about the different roles of folks in terms of social workers and housing placement people. But could you tell us a little bit more about the wonderful folks that work for People Self-Help Housing?
Well, I have some really talented people, I have to say, and they're very committed. In our housing development side, it's raising a lot of money to do housing on the Central Coast. It's very expensive. So I actually have a CPA that's a project manager. I have a banker. I have several ex-bankers that work doing the actual capital, raising the financing for the capital. And then I do have a staff in supportive housing. We have 8 social workers. We have a licensed clinical social worker that's in charge. We also have a lot in our property management section. We have over 80 employees because when you have over 1,300 units, you have a need to have maintenance on staff and managers. So we have over 80 in property management, and then around 45 in our central office that handles fiscal. We have a lot of accounting that we have to do. So we have a large staff.
That is a very big staff, and I have to credit you as the executive director for what it must be like to oversee that many programs and maintain the viability of the agency. I know you guys have been around for a while, and we'll talk a little bit more about an anniversary that's coming up. How many different offices do you guys have?
Well, we have our main office in San Luis Obispo, and then we have another office in Santa Barbara. So as we've grown in various jurisdictions, ask us. We get a call from Carpinteria, and they say, can you help us out? Or Ventura. We did open an office, and we have about 10 staff down there.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
So,
and for folks that might have be familiar with People Self-Help Housing, they may have also heard of this thing called the Duncan Group. And could you tell us a little bit more about that?
well, when we started doing rental housing, we knew we were going to need property managers. And we knew that it was going to be a specialty, that we really had to have people that can stay or live on site and also work with a variety of different people in our units. So the board was going to form another nonprofit, and they were looking for names. And normally you name it after someone when they die. So in my case, I'm still alive, Jeanette Duncan, and they named it the Duncan Group. So that's where the name came from.
What an honor for you probably to be acknowledged and not posthumously, but while you're still around and still actually with the organization.
Right,
That's wonderful.
yes. And I was here when we started. We actually started in San Luis Obispo, a group of local people. There was a Superior Court judge who was a Superior Court now, but he just graduated from law school. And there was a planning director and a building inspector, a couple of a Methodist minister, some Cal Poly professors, and myself. I was a housewife, and we talked about doing something different with housing where people would get involved. So we started the Sweat Equity program long before Habitat started.
Yeah, and the idea of sweat equity is people have to kind of buy in through their own labor with the projects.
Right. It's a mutual self-help, which means that a group of at least 10 families all work together building one another's home.
Okay.
So we're building neighborhoods.
Gotcha.
And we've been doing that since 1970.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Well, so as such, then I have to, if I'm doing the math correctly in my head here in the year 2010, you guys are basically at your 40th anniversary. And do you have any plans this year to acknowledge that milestone?
Yes, we're going to be celebrating 40 years over 40 days in 3 locations. Our first one is down in Santa Barbara on October 3rd at a private home near the Mission. The second one is in Nipomo at Edwards Barn on October 23rd, and that's going to have music, a live auction. We're expecting at least 200 people there. And then the one in Paso Robles is on November 6th. And Mr. Niner, who built Niner Winery, has offered that facility to us. And so we're having a gourmet dinner. So we're celebrating in 3 spots for 40 days.
That is amazing. And we'll, of course, put the contact information up on screen so folks can, go to your website and learn more about how to get involved or how to financially contribute. I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Jeanette, about the role of volunteers in your organization. A lot of the nonprofit organizations we interview really just credit the in-kind support that they get from volunteers as keeping them economically viable in these tough times, because they wouldn't be able to otherwise afford some of the services that people provide. Could you tell us a little bit about the ways in which People's Self-Help Housing utilizes volunteers?
Well, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but we operate after-school programs in different learning centers that we have. And we actually started that because the parents came to me and said their children were falling behind in school. So we hire a credentialed teacher and an aide, but we need volunteers. And so we have a lot of volunteers, like the lady at Canyon Creek. Lulu is her name. The children all call her Lulu. And we have someone down in Santa Barbara called Grandma. They come every day after school, and they help the kids, and they help in the classroom. And then during the summer, we also have education programs for the kids. So we can really use volunteers for that. We take them on field trips. And we're trying, like Lulu's trying to teach them how to knit during the summer.
Wow, okay, that's
But aside from that, they're doing the ABCs in math.
Wow, very important stuff, no doubt. Well, for folks out there that might be watching and thinking maybe they have some time to volunteer and maybe donate, I'd imagine they could go to the website and maybe find out a little bit more information about requirements for volunteering and things like that.
Yes, and they can also call our office in San Luis Obispo, which is the area code 805, of course, and it's 781-3088. And we gladly take volunteers. We can also use them for other things when we have special activities going on. We certainly can use volunteers for our 40th anniversary events.
There you go.
And we've had people come forward with lovely auction items, trips, things like that. And so sure, we'll need a lot of help for those events.
A lot of help. And I'd imagine, like a lot of other nonprofit organizations, in addition to the special events that you're doing here for your 40th anniversary, I'd imagine there's also a lot of opportunities for philanthropy, financial support, and people maybe donating in ways that might meet their sort of interests in terms of supporting the community and things.
Right, and we also have a woman that works for us that is very familiar with plan giving. And we had a gentleman call whose wife had been a teacher. She passed away, and he set up as part of his estate some funds that will go to our after-school education programs. So in addition to actually funding or writing a check, which is always something we welcome, we also work on estate planning and plan giving too.
Yeah, and that's a real appropriate thing given your guys' mission for housing. If somebody has a property, you know, to give that, and you know, that seems like that would be a very fitting sort of a contribution.
And I think that people are really rewarded when they see, for example, I have children who I've known since they were young come to me and say, gosh, I just got accepted into college. We've had a couple kids really do well and go on to Ivy League schools, actually. But we've been working with this after-school program now for about 7 years. And so some of the children we know are going on and are going to be successful.
Wow, wonderful. Well, any last things you'd like to mention, Jeanette, in terms of people's or how people might be able to get in contact with you or anything else?
Again, they can go on our website, and I think you probably show it on the screen. I'm not sure. And also they can call our office. Our Santa Barbara office is 805-962-5152. And our San Luis office, again, is 805-781-3088.
Wonderful. Well, it's very clear to me in talking to you and seeing your wonderful facilities that you guys are you serve just a very important niche in the local community as well as the communities in 3 different counties. So I want to thank you for all the great work you've been doing and to all of your staff, and I wish you the best in the future.
Well, thank you very much, Jason, for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.